Hello, I want to welcome you to my first lesson of our Math 116 class. And those that are listening, today we're going to cover uh, conversions. Now, what I've got a list of at the beginning of this is some conversions that we do see and we use a lot. Some of them we know, some of them we don't. And when you think of conversions, I mean, you can think of, okay, how many days are there in a year? Well, one year is 365 days. How many hours are in a day? 24. What does a dozen mean? It means if you have a dozen eggs, it's 12. So those are some typical everyday uses we use. So some of these, just scroll down uh, and see. I've got some listings of it, and you can find it throughout your book, and you can surf the internet and see a lot of these conversions. I'm more concerned about how, and I'm going to show you here in a minute, how to convert from one unit to one unit. Now, I don't know all of these conversions mentally, but I do know how to work them out if I have them in front of me. Now, as you scroll down at this, one thing we sticks out is 1 mile is 5,280 feet. We know this. At the very bottom, 1 yard equals 3 feet. And since there are 12 inches in a foot, 3 foot means we have 36 inches. 1 pound is 454 grams. Also, 1 pound is also 16 ounces as well. When you scroll down here, 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds. Now, conversions can mean, okay, if you have 3 miles, how many feet? Now, what I'm going to show you is kind of a way how to look at this, okay? And I want you all to write this down because I think this has helped previous students of mine understanding conversions, okay? So if you go from I'm going to put a little side note right here. If you have a large unit going to a smaller unit, and then if you have a smaller unit going to a larger unit. Okay, so I want you to think about the large unit in smaller units. Okay, think of a big cube of Mountain Dew. So the big unit, maybe it has 24 cans in it. Okay, so when you break these down, you're going to have a bunch of cans. Okay, there's going to be 24 of these. Okay, so that means if you have something like maybe 2 of these, you could say 2 times 24 to give you 48. So when you go from large units to small units, you always multiply. So say if we had, for instance, if we had, let's just say you had maybe 48 cans. We'll just say those are cans. And we want to put those back into a 24 pack. So that means you would say you would have to divide. You would divide like 24 into 48 to give you, in this case, it would be 2. And that's what we're going to pick up on using all of these different units. So the key to these conversions is understanding what is a large unit and what is the smaller unit. So let's look at the 3 miles, okay? 3 miles, and then think of feet. Okay, right off the bat, if you want to do this, you can. You can say, okay, this is the large unit. I'm going to just abbreviate so we don't have to write a lot. Large unit and a small unit. So I know going from large to small will multiply. But what am I going to multiply? Well, if I have 3 miles, I'm going to kind of make this in a table so you can see what's happening here. And we know 1 mile, if you look at our chart, it's 5280 feet. So this means I'm going to multiply. So watch this. What happens? The miles cancel out. The feet is what we're looking for. So if you say 3 times 5280, you should get 15,840. Now, at any point in this video or any of my videos that you listen to, I would always pause it, and you can always work it out and then unpause it to check to see if your answers are correct. And you can review these as many times as you need. Okay, what about in number 2, 1,000 feet is how many miles? Well, notice that's going to be small. I'm going to just label small to large because feet are smaller. So I know I need to divide. So I'm going to take 1,000 feet. And now I know 1 mile is the 5280 feet. So look what the feet cancel each other out. Look, this is the unit that I'm looking for. So then you would just say 1,000 divided by 5280. You're going to get a small number. Okay. Now, if they ask you to round it right now to like the second decimal or the hundredth spot, then that would turn into this right here. What about if you have 34 inches to centimeters? Well, I know that inches is my larger unit, even though it's not large, but it's larger than centimeters. Centimeters is my small. So that means I know I'm going to have to multiply them. So I'm going to have 34 inches. Then I'm going to say 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. My inches cancel. This is the unit we're looking for. So if you multiply these out, you should get 86.34. Okay, so grams to pounds. Well, grams is a really small unit. Think of grams of like sugar or salt. So I know this is my small, this is my large. So I'm going to take this 800 grams and 1 pound. So that means when I put this on the bottom, that means we're going to divide. That is 454 grams. The grams cancel each other out. Then if we divide, we get something like 1.76. Okay, one other thing I want to talk about too before I go to my next example is understanding this kind of relates back to number 3 in a way. But when you have 1 meter in 1 meter, usually we use centimeters or millimeters. So Centi, like think of century, or think of a centipede. The number you should think about is 100. Milli, think of millipede or millennium, think of 1,000. So whenever you have one unit and you have a big number, that means that the meter is my larger number or my larger unit, and my centimeters are my smaller ones. Now, this is a little confusing because normally we do not see this, and that is yard squared or feet squared. Now, for instance, yard squared and feet squared would mean that you're dealing with areas. So if we've painted something, or painted our walls, or maybe put fencing out, you're thinking of, like, you want to know how much square footage you can hold in there. That's what we use. We use squared. So now it's understanding what unit is. You still have to recognize which one is larger and which one's smaller. So I'm going to know that, okay, if you know 1 yard equals 3 feet, since it's 1, that 1 tells us that that's the larger. The feet squared means that's the smaller. So now I know I need to start with 10 yards squared. So what is 1 yard squared? Okay. Well, I want you to forget the squared right now. 1 yard is the 3 feet. Okay. But if you square it, you square the feet and you also square that 3. So what this turns into now is it turns into 10 yards squared, 1 yard squared, and then that 3 squared is 9, so it's 9 feet squared. And notice what happens to my yard squared. They cancel. Feet squared is what we're looking for, so you would say 10 times 9, which gives me 90 feet squared. And what about if you have centimeters squared and inches squared? Well, I know from my conversions that 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. So I know right off the bat the inch is large, the centimeters will be the smaller. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, 20 centimeters squared (1 inch). So think of 1 inch is my 2.54 centimeters. But if I want to square to find the inch, I'm going to square the centimeters and also square the 2.54. So on your calculators, what you want to do is you want to hit 20 centimeters squared divided by 2.54 centimeters squared. And I'll make one other side note on your calculators, whether you're, depending on, I might make a little side note. If your graphing calculator or some of our scientific calculators, if you do 2.54, there's a little caret mark. So usually on your right side, you put 2.54 squared. Those that do not have that, you're going to have to look for the y to the x symbol. And then you would do, some of us would have to do 2.54 y to the x and then 2. Some of us may have to do 2 y to the x to the 2.54. Just depending on your model of your calculators. So please repeat this as many times as you want. to use on your calculators. So those would be used on your scientific. Okay, so going back, and when you say 20 divided by 2.54 squared, the centimeters squared cancel each other out. So you should come up with something like 3.1. Now my last example, okay, it's you take 300 feet cubed now, and we're trying to convert it to yards cubed. Now, when you think of cubic stuff, I want you to think of volume. So think about a swimming pool, for example. Now, I know that there's 1 yard equals 3 feet. So that's my small unit, that's my large unit. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 300 feet cubed, 1 yard equals 3 feet. But what I'm going to do is I need to cube it. I cube the feet and I also cube the 3. So in other words, what this would look like is 300 feet cubed, 1 yard cubed, and 3 cubed is the same as 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. Notice that my feet cubes cancel. My yard cubed is what I'm looking for. So 300 divided by 27 would give you something like this, 11.11. Now I do have for those that are in my Math 116 class, your web assigned homework number 1, and also I do have a short video on my YouTube that explains how to get to your book. So I want you all to thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.